Welcome to our second module of the course Sustainable Living and Environmental Studies. In today's course, we shall be dealing with environmental challenges and sustainable issues. This module is categorically about the challenges that we face today and how we are facing an issue achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals agenda. Today's topic is about climate change. Climate change is something we all know. It's present everywhere. No one is stranger to it. The air that we are breathing is decreasing in its quality. The food that we are eating is not healthy food anymore. The soil where our crops are growing is not a fertile soil anymore. The trees that are growing do not survive enough. The water levels in the ground are falling down. All of these changes, from littlest changes of the bees not being able to pollinate like they used to bigger levels of polar ice caps melting, is all climate change. We shall delve into the causes of climate change, the impact of climate change, and how we should adopt certain strategies to adapt to such a change. It's important to understand the cause of climate change. Why? If we do not know why something is happening, how will we find a cure? So the causes of climate change become very important. Something as basic as we run our cars, we avoid using public transport, and we emit a lot of carbon dioxide and soot into the air, to something as big as causing mass level forest felling is one cause of climate change. According to the United Nations, fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas, by far are the largest contributors of global climate change. These three things, coal, oil, gas, why do these three contribute a lot? Because the burning of these causes a lot of emission of greenhouse gases. And these greenhouse gases, as I put up in a trivia question before, depletes the ozone layer because of the production of chlorofluorocarbons. And these greenhouse gases are also responsible for the greenhouse effect. Because these gases form a blanket on the Earth's atmosphere and prevent the heat from going out, which is then trapped within the atmospheric layer, leading to a rise in temperature. And a rise in temperature is one big climate change that we are facing. Greenhouse gas emissions blanket the Earth. They trap the sun's heat, and this leads to global warming and climate change. A simple example we can see: if you put up a plant, let's say we put up this plant and put it in a glass house where there's sunlight coming within, but there's no way the heat goes outside, we will notice the temperature of this glass house will begin to rise. Now, this is a setup which is man-made, but when such greenhouse gases blanket the surface of the earth, these greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, the nitrous oxide, they all are powerful greenhouse gases that blanket the earth and trap sun heat, leading to a rise in temperature. Now, let's draw the earth and let's draw the atmospheric layer. Let's say this is the atmospheric layer, the ozone layer. Now, because of the emission of these gases that blanket the earth, the sun's rays that are coming inside are unable to go outside, causing a rise in temperature. This rise in temperature is one big climate change that we are facing. Why? Because the facts state that 2011 to 20, the last decade that we saw, is the warmest decade on record. Let's go back to causes of climate change again. The other cause of climate change, apart from the burning of fossil fuels, is manufacturing of goods and other industry produce emissions mostly from burning fossil fuels again to produce energy for making things like cement, iron, steel. So all these industries which manufacture goods, the good manufacturing industry, which are intensively dependent on fossil fuels. Now, there's a lot of fossil fuel involvement when there's an iron industry or a steel industry or an electronic industry or a plastic industry. Plastic industry, in addition, let me write it down. In addition, uses a lot of water. Plastic uses a lot of water. Cloth manufacturing, again, cloth manufacturing, the textile industry. So, the textile industry and the plastic industry, these two not just use a lot of fossil fuel but also a lot of water. So they consume a lot of both of the natural resources which are non-renewable, leading to a lot of climate change. So what can we do? We can do a bit to reduce the usage of fossil fuels. We can do our bit to do less shopping of clothes. If the demand is less, the production would ultimately be less. The other cause of climate change is heavy mining. We studied a case law before of the Sundarbans where we saw illegal mining. Of the Western Ghats we saw the illegal mining. The illegal mining and other industrial processes releases gases, and that construction industry not only uses a lot of things but it also releases a lot of pollution. It releases a lot of wastewater and they run. So they all these industries are not only what they send out in the form of pollution, the polluted water, the air pollution, but also what they consume. They consume a lot of coal, they consume a lot of oil, they consume a lot of gases. And plastics again are made from chemicals which are sourced from fossil fuels again. The manufacturing industry is one of the largest contributors to the greenhouse gases. So the manufacturing industry in any way is releasing a lot of greenhouse gases. So we can say that fossil fuel consumption is the main reason that greenhouse gases emission is increasing. Next reason for the change of climate, as I discussed in the introduction, is the cutting down of forests. Why a forest? The RA forests in Maharashtra were being cut with a lot of actors, the Bollywood actors saying that they should not be cut. Why? Because a lot of forest area cover was going to be cut to create a highway and roads. So we're doing that under the garb of modernization, under the garb of better infrastructure, which is also important. But at the same time, sustainability is very important. We cannot just cut down forests and make our roads and not do afforestation. Approximately each year, 12 million hectares of forest is destroyed. Are such number of forests being grown as well? No. Since forests now absorb carbon dioxide, destroying these hectares of forest also limits the nature's ability to keep emissions out of the atmosphere. And when carbon dioxide increases, the greenhouse effect happens. The next cause of climate change again is the vehicular emission. Again, fossil fuels combustion. Most cars, trucks, ships and planes run on fossil fuels. They make transportation a major contributor of greenhouse gases, especially carbon dioxide. Road vehicles account for the largest part due to combustion of petroleum-based products like gasoline and internal combustion engines. Our homes again. We use a lot of electricity. You sit in one room, you don't prefer sitting with your parents. You turn on your air conditioner, you turn on your television, you turn on your speakers, you turn on your own chargers. And when you go out of your room, you forget to turn off the lights, you forget to turn off the fan. You just say, I'll be back in a while. How we move around in our home contributes to a lot of carbon footprint. Such private household consumption has a profound impact on our planet. Now, what impact do all these causes have on climate change? We have seen the temperatures are rising. As I record this, it's the month of May and it feels like it's July. It's so hot. The hotter temperatures. As greenhouse gases concentration rises, the global surface temperature increases. The thing that we just studied about, the gases trapping sun's light because they form a blanket around the earth, that the heat is unable to go outside and it stays inside. The last decade is the warmest decade on record, is a very sad state of affairs. Since the 1980s, each decade has been warmer than the previous one. Nearly all land areas are seeing more hot days and heat waves. Higher temperatures increase in heat-related illnesses. We often see people suffering from what we call a heat stroke. And going outdoors is increasingly difficult. Wildfires, the forest fires, they start more easily and spread more rapidly when conditions are hotter. Trees just rub against each other, and there's such a lack of good moisture in the air. There's such a lack of moisture in the leaves themselves that wildfire starts more easily, causing more destructive storms. As the temperature rises, more moisture evaporates, which exacerbates extreme rainfall and flooding. Now, this would mean that when the temperature rises, it's a very simple phenomena. When the temperature will rise, more water from the water bodies will evaporate, right? When more water will evaporate, the rainfall seasons will not be seasonal, they will be erratic. And such rainfalls, which will happen because of a lot of moisture that has gathered in the atmosphere, will be extreme. It will not be moderate, it will not be seasonal, it will not be when the rivers are running dry and then it rains to fill in those rivers like it used to as a natural process. It will only lead to flooding, which will cause more destructive storms ahead. The frequency and extent of tropical storms is also affected by warming of the ocean. The sea wave, land breeze, the sea breeze concept. Cyclones, hurricanes, and typhoons feed on warm waters at the ocean surface. Such storms often destroy homes and communities, causing deaths and huge economic loss. Like we see what's happening in the southern part of India. So many typhoons are hitting it. Question for you. Which international agreement aims to limit global warming below 2 degrees Celsius? Although, like we started, everything in the last decade has gotten hotter by 10 degrees, but which international agreement aims to limit global warming below 2 degrees Celsius? We'll come back to the answer at the end of this topic, but right now, let's discuss about adaptation strategies and a few more impacts of climate change. Climate change is changing water availability. This is a very, very important thing. The groundwater levels are falling at a rate which is very, very alarming. So alarming that states are fighting for water, countries are fighting for water. Global warming exacerbates water shortage in already water-stressed regions, leading to an increased risk of agricultural droughts. We can see when the natural streams running dry, with the seasonal rainfall not happening, there will be no growth of crops, the fields will run dry, there will be droughts, and that will affect the crops, that will affect the agriculture patterns. Droughts can also stir destructive sand and dust storms. Now, if there's no thing holding the soil together, there are no roots holding the soil together, the soil is going to be prone to erosion. And when that drought area becomes so wide, it's going to result in dust storms and sand storms, which moves billions and tons of sand across continents. The deserts are expanding and reducing the land for growing food. Now, because of this falling groundwater levels and the rainfall patterns changing, because of these things, the drought areas, the desert areas are increasing. They are expanding, which thus reduces the land for growing food. Many people face the threat of not having enough water on a regular basis. And it's very true. States of South India have fought over the Kaveri dispute. States in North India are fighting currently as we speak and record this video. So all of these things are a big impact of climate change and the scarcity of water. The effects of climate change are most apparent in the world's coldest regions as well. We think that our actions only impact a little area where we are living. No. Even the uninhabited Arctic region is heating up twice as fast as anywhere else on this earth, leading to a rapid melting of glaciers and polar ice sheets, where a massive amount of water is stored. There's a melting of polar ice caps. We think sitting over here in the continents like Asia, America, Africa, nothing is going to affect to the Arctic Circle. But no, even the poles are having a big impact on what we are doing here. In just 15 years, the Arctic could be entirely ice-free in summer. It's just 15 more years that the Arctic is going to be entirely ice-free. This is a very important case study that in just 15 years, a polar region, something at the pole which is supposed to be a permafrost area, always frozen area, might be entirely ice-free in the summer. Loss of species. Exacerbated by climate change, the world is losing species at the rate of 1,000 times greater than any other rate recorded in human history. The 21st century is witnessing this right now. 1 million species are at a risk of becoming extinct within the next few decades. We've seen that a lot of species that were endangered earlier have become extinct today, and more than 1 million species are at a risk of becoming extinct in the next few decades. Forest fires, extreme weather, and invasive pests and diseases are among many threats related to climate change. Sea levels are rising. Scientists predict that melting sea and glaciers, as the fact that warmer water expands in volume, the ice that was existing in the form of glaciers, when it melts, the volume is going to increase. And when the volume increases, the sea levels are going to rise. The extent of this change is going to devastate the low-lying regions, including island nations like New York City, like our Mumbai. Then the soil health has reduced, and there is unpredictable season and monsoon patterns. The biggest example of this is that in 2023, Maharashtra and Punjab saw the most irregular monsoon patterns ever. And of course, the human health is going to suffer. How must we adapt, and why must we adapt? Why are adaptation strategies important? There's a famous Cree people saying that goes, when the last tree is cut, the last fish is caught, and the last river is poisoned, will only then we realize that we cannot eat money. In this rat race of making money, in this race of industrialization, heavy modernity, heavy urbanization, we're forgetting that we are the borrowers of nature and we have to pay a heavy debt. And it's very late already. but we still must adapt certain strategies to cope up and to do better. Adaptation as a word refers to adjustments, and in this context, it means adjustments in the ecological, social, and economic systems in response to the actual or expected climatic stimuli. Now, all the climate impact that we studied is what that is going to be a stimuli. What is a stimuli? A stimuli is an external agent which imposes its act on us, in reaction to which we give a reaction. So the reaction we must give has to be something in tune with the ecological, social, and economic system. It refers to the changes in the processes, the practices, and the structures to moderate a potential damage. We cannot really curb the damage that is being caused, but what we can do is at least moderate the potential damage or the benefit that we get from the opportunities which are associated from climate change. What benefits do we get from industrialization? Better job opportunities, better infrastructure, better living. But all of this has to be in tune with what is happening because of climate change. In simple terms, countries and communities need to develop adaptation solutions to respond to the current and future climate change impacts. And of course, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. These adaptation strategies can range from building flood defenses because the sea levels are going to rise, the monsoon is going to be erratic, there is going to be flooding, setting up early warning systems so that we don't know what the impact of climate change is going to be. Do not suffer how much we have to suffer. The suffering here now at this time is inevitable, but we can set up early warning systems. We can switch to certain drought resistant crops. We can redesign our communication systems, better operations and government policies. And to add here, something in the field of transportation has to be done. Each individual running his own car or running on his own personal vehicle is one major cause which should be curbed. These adaptation strategies, as shown by the UN climate change regime, the UN has a forum where it has adapted certain adaptation policy cycles. So it says you need to assess the impacts, vulnerability, and the risks that are there. And then when you have assessed something, you know it, you need to plan for having an adaptation to it. And when you have a plan, you need to implement that plan. And once you implement it, you need to have a feedback, you need to monitor it and evaluate it if it's a right process. And again, you have to do an impact assessment and do the same process again. Now that can involving a variety of stakeholders. It can involve something as basic as awareness campaigns. It can involve something as basic as studying a course on sustainable living and environmental studies. It can involve something as big as something on the international level. It can involve good governance. It can involve strengthening the technical and institutional capacities and facilitating everyone so that they know what is the adaptation strategy. Adaptation is a critical component of the long-term global response to climate change to protect people, livelihoods, and ecosystems. Parties must acknowledge that adaptation should follow a country-driven, gender-responsive, participatory, and transparent approach, leading to something that saves the ecosystems. Knowledge should be given to all. Environmental policies and actions should be integrated into the socio-economic fabric of the country so that everyone has a role to play. Before we end this topic today, let's go back to a question that I had for you. Here. So the answer to this question is the Paris Agreement. Now that we know from this topic about what is climate change, what causes climate change, what impact climate change has on us, and what can we do to do certain strategic improvements in our behaviors, in our policies, in our spaces to plan better for the future. Let's adopt the same. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next topic.